Ladies and gents, welcome back to the show, part number 3 with Magnus Samuelsson. If you missed part number 1 and part number 2, seriously, guys, we'll put the link to those in the description. Make sure you go and check them out. Magnus,
Yeah,
I've got to pick up on some of the stuff that you were talking about in part 2, mate. You've just spoken. So just to recap a little bit, you walked us through your history getting into strength sports. You then walked us through your winning the European Championships in arm wrestling. You're winning the world's strongest man. And perhaps most interestingly, you said that you sort of glossed over the win of the world's strongest man and said, then I really started to get good. But I always managed to make errors in the world's strongest man itself. And if you look at your record go online, look at that, guys, you'll see win, always in the upper echelons of everything. But just when we were offline a moment there, you said, I think it is important that people realize you have to have something that mentally prepares you for these events. And that is massive. The fact that you said that you were better in the years following your win of the world's strongest man, and yet you never managed to get it, just sort of emphasizes, and we've seen that with other people. Look at Thor Bjornsson recently. Everybody, he was always expected to win it. He was going to win it, and then he didn't. He was going to win it, and he didn't. And he's going to win it, and he didn't. We've seen that with other guys. Let's get into that a little bit more, mate, because you were just talking about it there, and I think it's fascinating.
well, there's a few different aspects to it. One, of course, is the physical part where you need to hold everything together for a long time, and you may have problems with injuries and all that. And then you have another angle of it is that when you're really getting into the pro level, you will probably compete so much during the whole year. So when you finally get to the world's strongest man, that was my case at least. I've probably done 10 big contests coming into World's Strongest Man, and you're going to all of a sudden fight people that's being a bit more clever. They invested the whole year in that game.
Peak
for that contest. So that's another thing. But also the how we work mentally coming into a contest will affect things. And everybody, regardless what they say, will doubt themselves a bit when you go into a major event. And you will look on the opponents and you're going to think, shit, he's in good shape. Of course he's in good shape. He's been training the whole year for this. This is the World Championships.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody tend to start to doubt themselves by finding an excuse why it should be all right to lose this time. Why, for yourself, you can lose without losing your inner honor. And just by thinking like that, you already lost it.
Yeah.
It's a really important thing to learn how to stay positive is the wrong word for it, but to stay sharp and focused during a whole game.
Yeah.
And not to start to doubt. And why, for example, if somebody makes a bad event, why do they normally mess up the second and the third event also, just because they made one bad first?
Because they're dwelling on it.
Always, and everybody said, like in boxing and everything else, focus on the next thing. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really matter what just happened. Eye on the ball the whole time. So the mental aspect of a big championship is a big thing.
Oh my God, I think it's enormous, mate. Do you think? I mean, the funny thing is, you spoke about your unexpected success in earlier events in your career. And it happened a number of times where you sort of went in there with that nothing to lose, attitude. Particularly, you were saying the world's strongest man in Vegas. I think the year Ahola won it, and you went in there and you were like, well, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna get to the final. You had sort of that hunter rather than hunted thing, and it takes the pressure off. That the underdog, as long as the underdog can hit hard enough, which you clearly could. There's always that danger if you're mentally there,
It is, and in many ways, that's the golden thing with sport. When you just if I look back, there is a few things I'm extra proud about, but the years where you started to go, maybe you take the 10th position, and all of a sudden you reach the 5th position, and you will go home being the happiest guy of everybody because you've never been that good before. And the whole journey up to winning it is magic.
Yeah.
So for me, when I came home with the third, second runner-up of World's Strongest Man '97, it was really happy times. And just like you said, you have nothing to lose. Everything is just bonus. So it's much easier to compete. And if I turn it around, 360, all my greatest years that came after the World's Strongest Man, when I won it, I had a few years where to brag a bit, I knew if I don't make any big mistakes, I would probably win the contest. But then it became almost to a point where if I won, I didn't become super happy because I expected myself to win.
Yeah, sure.
And if I didn't win, everything was crap. So the closest I ever were to quit strongman was probably the year 2003. For some reason, I was fed up with it. And we talked about it before, but everybody tends to forget that it's not only staying on fancy hotels and swimming in luxury pools. It's a whole lot of training, always having pain, always forcing down tremendous amount of food. Everybody's always terrified for injuries and the next contest and Lord knows what, because we're pushing everything from all kinds of directions. So as long as the reward is not worth it, I mean, as long as the reward is worth more than all that, then it's a win. But when you don't really appreciate winning anymore, then you should back away from it. And
do you think it became more of a job for you then? So you go from that, you obviously spoke about, when you were a kid, when you were that young man who was working all day on the farm and then going into the gym, and you were putting that 2 hours, 3 hours in the gym after having labored all day, that was the best part of the day, the highlight, the release. Do you think you got to a stage there, from what you just describing, that had gone? It becomes a chore. The pressure gets too much, and it's a job, not fun anymore.
I mean, it turns into a job. That's the truth. It turns in probably to the best job in the whole wide world, but it's still a job. Rather to just be before something you did out of pure heart and enjoyment.
Yeah.
But still loved it, though, I can't say. But for some reason, I had a period there where it became more a work than the payback gave. So we started talking about doing something else, and then I popped bicep off in the gym.
Jesus.
And which was obviously really bad. But on the other hand, when you're doing really well, people try to find a reason to cut you away. There is a lot of great people out there, but there's also a few backstabbers, and they would be super thrilled when somebody's, now it's over. He's never gonna make it back. So that became my motivator. So I'm gonna get back as soon as I can. Wrong. Yeah. So I was competing in the World's Strongest Man only like 4 months after that. And during the very first competition, I made it to the final. This was Malaysia 2002. So I made a final in Malaysia. And in the final, the first event, I was running with the farmer's walk anvils, I remember. And then I was turning. And as I turned, I just dropped them. I couldn't really feel anything. I just picked them up again, dropped them. I couldn't see something is wrong. And then I just looked at my left bicep, and it was up shaking. So I'm like, okay, here we go again. So back home, and then reattach another bicep. So it was a pretty bad bicep here. And then
yeah, it's up there, mate.
and then back home again. And during that break, I kind of found joy again. So then I ended up competing up till about November 2008.
I mean, if you look back at sort of the history of strongman, you've had these eras. There was the sort of the US dominant era, because that's where it started initially. Then you had capes. Then you were in an era yourself. That's Scandi dominance.
Mm-hmm.
It was, wasn't it? You had yourself. Ahola was. How many times did Ahola get it? Was he like 3 times, 4 times?
I think he got it 2 times. 97, 99, I think. Yeah.
And then there was Janne. Got it.
Rico Kiri.
Rico Kiri. spend.
Yeah.
You know, you guys had that little community. I mean, how much of a factor was that, mate? How much did that pay into? Were you guys just feeding off each other, training and tips and so on? Was there really that brotherhood there, or is that not how it was?
I mean, we had a great time together, and we were good friends, but of course we tried our absolute best to beat the crap out of each other in the weekends. But we had really good times out traveling together. It made the whole touring thing really good, I must say.
Yep.
And I think the sport it's gone through changes, and they always go through changes for reasons. I mean, the world and everything changes constantly. And during my time, strongmen were a mix of strength and endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard thing to mix, because you know how it works. You're stronger and heavier you get, you worse endurance you will have, and the vice versa.
Yeah.
And most guys found that if they got too heavy, because we all like to lift big things in the gym, so we tend to get a bit too heavy with age.
Yeah.
And then we suffer a bit more on the
mm-hmm.
cardio events, on all the big. Before the World's Strongest Man, for example, or one major event, I would normally only focus on cardio.
Mm-hmm.
I will do light gym training, but I will do tons of interval and stuff like that, because that's where the points were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because of that, I think, and also the events were fairly long, so that a lot of people paid a pretty high price for that, because it's hard to be big and heavy and then push yourself for a long time. So a few people died. I mean, they paid a very high price for it, and they died, and that changed the sport away. And I think it also has to do with, I mean, TV rights and stuff, because all of a sudden, because of that, BBC pulled out, and all of a sudden it was only the American and Canadian market left, and it changes things.
Sure.
But that's how life is. You know, every arc will sooner or later lose height and start hit for the ground. So for me, I was blessed enough to do my thing during my time, and my time served me good. And so for me, what happened were, I was probably at my physically strongest just when I stopped. All my bragging records in the gym would be done the last 2 years. All my,
wow,
all your best benches, deadlifts, and all that, I did the last 2 years. But as an athlete, I was way better 5 years prior to that.
Yeah. So your static had gone up, but you'd lost some of your bites.
I went through the whole circle. When I started this in the beginning back in '95, I was probably not by any means the strongest guy, but I was very fast from tracking feeds. I was explosive. I had stamina that I could, like I said, I could walk all day long with farmers walk and stuff like that. And in the end of it, I was on the other side. I was I was pretty strong, but I've lost a few other skills on the way to get there. And also what happened were, I mean, there were a few people that it comes back to what I said before, that as long as you get the reward higher than the price you're paying, you're going in profit. For me, a lot of the social the social life on the road, because we spent most of the year on the road.
Yeah.
And all the other guys was gone. I was the only old timer left. So that changed a bit. And also my great friend and my neighbor I used to train with, Nicholas, he passed away. And so some other guy, it was kind of a bad time. So, up till this point, it was always me, the home team, us against the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it wasn't that fun anymore. I never competed to go home and brag about it, but it's always fun when we are a few guys together chasing the horizon, kind of.
Of course it is.
Thing.
Yeah.
And when that faded out, together with a lot of other things, and Jesse Morande died, and there were a few bad things that happened, I just kind of lost interest for it. So I went home, and we talked heavily about retiring. I had 2 kids, and And also at the same time, they talked me into do a TV show that Dancing with the Stars.
Hey.
So, which were like a strange thing to do, but I ended up doing that, and then for some reason we ended up winning it. And then so many other doors opened.
Over the fact that you actually won it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so after that, I got the opportunity to do a lot of other things, and so it just became a natural way to walk away from strength, from the scene of the World's Strongest Man.
Did you miss it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of me. It comes and goes in waves. I stayed away from strongman quite long time after I retired, and I was maybe a bit concerned that I don't really want to be one of those guys that cling on to something. Life is a beautiful thing, and I will try to do as much as I can with it. So I was just trying to pull away from strongman and try to learn new things, do other things. So I ended up did a lot of TV programs, and then all of a sudden I got an opportunity to do acting. So since the last 10 years, I've done quite a bit of acting, and then I started my own companies, and just about to launch a new company called, the company is called True Performance, but the products are called Enough, which is like an environment-friendly nutrition line where, being born and raised on a farmer, I'm concerned about nature and animal rights and stuff like that. Sure. So we made a product line based on that. So I tried to do a lot of other things, and then thanks to Giants Live, you guys called me, and I went to Leeds, and it was really overwhelming feeling to come back and to see it all in so many different ways. First of all, immediately you recognize the camaraderie between athletes. It's all still the same. It's the best sport in the world to compete in, just by that aspect alone. You come into the arena, and you just by smelling all the ligament, the whole thing, and half your brain is just like, give me a powerlifting belt, and I'm on. And then you realize, like, shit, I'm turning 51 next year.
Tremendous stuff, mate. Yeah. I mean, how was that experience, seeing where Giants Live have taken the sport? Because it's fair to say, it's now in a different place to anywhere it's ever been. I mean, arena shows where you've got 12,000 people in the crowd. It's crazy stuff.
It's crazy stuff, and it's done. All the respect to everybody that they took it so far, because of course, it's the same thing, but it's also a totally different thing from what I did. A lot of things are the same, but the way when I did it, we had arena contests as well, but they did a big mistake. All of them. They made arena competitions in the concept of a TV format, and that's why it never really worked as an arena concept. Yeah. While Giants Live, for example, is made like a proper arena event that just happens to be taped as well.
Yep.
And it's a big difference between that. So all the events is designed to take not so much space, and I really enjoyed it, and the way people are getting into it in the crowd was really nice to see.
You know what I liked about that, mate. You can say there's a lot of nostalgia within the sport of strongman, but the crowd reaction when we introduced you was great, and I mean, they really, obviously you're one of the most endearing figures in the history of the sport. Yourself, Sigmas, and people like that. The guys who've people really warmed to. They went on that journey with you, and when we brought you out that night, the reaction was nuts. And when after the show we did the meet and greet, and we had everybody down on the floor. The amount of people that made a point of mentioning that, it was fantastic that you have Magnus Samuelsson over here, and where is he? They were really, really keen to see you, to come up to say hello and stuff. It was really warming. It was great to see. I mean, you must have gone home feeling good about that.
Yeah. I must say I didn't know what to expect at all, but I can tell you for sure I did not expect that. And I left Leeds with a really warm feeling inside, and I was touched by it. I must be honest. And also for myself, with that evening, I got this Hall of Fame thing from Kazmaier, and for me that runs the whole circle perfectly. Kazmaier was one of my biggest heroes, being a kid watching strongman training, dreaming, and all that. And I remember me and my training partner the first time we saw Kazmaier out in the desert in Vegas. When we came home again, like on the biggest highlight of the whole contest, my friend said that was saying hi to Kazmaier. I mean, that's the thing when you're a young kid, you build up heroes probably bigger than they even were. That's part of being a kid. But then to stand on the stage one day and to get this achievement out of the hand of Bill Kazmaier was kind of a...
That's mega, isn't it?
It was kind of nice.
That is ace.
Yeah.
It really is great, mate. And good for you. It's fantastic. And it's the humility you show with things like that never ceases to astound me, mate. It really does. I mean, you know, you always talk about these guys like they're a different being to you, and yet you are that guy. You know, and it makes me... It's great. It's fabulous. Who were your heroes at the time when you were competing against these guys? Who were the guys that you had most respect for?
That's a good question. It has a few different answers. There is a few different kinds of respect. There were a few guys. When I went to contest, many times I went there, I was trying to win the contest. So there will be a few guys I will look on through that prospect. Who's the guy to beat during these events? Who would probably be the hardest guy? But then there were some other people that I could have massive respect for, that maybe was not the total contender, but they were for some other reason. And one of the most gifted guys I ever really saw, just from like pure nature, was Phil Pfister, I think.
Oh God, yeah.
He had this thing with him that if you just watched him, and I mean, I'm used to pay a pretty high price in the gym. I was the guy that, you know, if I would have been better by training 5 hours a day, I would have done that. I wasn't prepared to train whatever, but it turned out to be the opposite. That's why we were constantly overtrained instead. But he was a little bit more like a lazy nature, but just the pure energy of the whole guy when you saw him. He had this thing. It doesn't look so, you can't really see it on screen, but he were something else. And then you have all these powerhouses that can, you know, lift massive weights. And I mean, just look at Eddie Hall and there is a lot of fantastic people. For me, in my small world, there were also Mark Filippi, for example, a guy that never really made a big name for himself. But if you ever spent a day in the gym with him, he can do things in the gym I never. Back then, he could lift stuff in squat and deadlift, and I was like, I wish I got a piece of that cake, because he were super strong.
Do you think there was a mental thing with Mark? Do you think that was obviously Mark's probably more famous for when the car fell on him on the beach there, but do you think, I mean, he was so, like you say, guys like that who were so exceptional in training, do you think it's that they're fighting that inner demon you were speaking about earlier when it comes to big competition, maybe?
I mean, also they maybe a touch of that and a touch of bad luck as well, but also a bit of bad timing. If you take a guy like Mark Filippi, for example, and if you pull and you take him back to when he was about, I don't know, 35, and you would say to him, well, we want you to do heavy deads, big squats, a pole and axle, because those events were not in when he was good.
Sure.
I mean, his kind of physique would probably do fairly well today.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we were training backside my gym. He was over here, and we were training. I was trying to teach him how to do truck pulls and stuff. And then so we did that, and then after that, he went into the gym to do some stretching, and he was stretching out by putting 300 kilos on a squat bar, and he went down rock bottom and just sat there for like an eternity, and he stood up again. I was thinking, That's some heavy stretching right there.
Holy
But
shit.
he was super strong in events like that.
Wow.
He really was.
Fascinating insight, mate. Absolutely fascinating insight. What about the other Scandi lads? I mean, obviously you had some freaks of nature there. You had, I mean, Ahola always used to amaze me because he wasn't a big guy in the grand scheme of things, and yet so powerful.
I mean, Ahola he was probably a touch over 120, 125, 120, I would say.
Which by modern standards is small, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he had a. I would say he was pretty much my opposite. I was strong in bench, fairly right overhead, but if I had to pick two things, I would choose bench press and biceps curl, like.
Yeah.
And he would be, and that's probably his two worst events. But then again, he could deadlift. And just to clarify, I'm not saying he was bad in those events. I'm just saying that he was a better deadlifter than a bench press.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there was always be somebody being super upset. But I mean, we were a bit of a difference. So if we looked at the contest, we can pretty much say if there were more events based on deadlifting things, I'm going to have a rougher day. Or if it were more, on the other hand, it would be on the other way around.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Guys, that brings us to the end of part 3. But remember, if you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, and we'll be back for more with Mag in part 4.